Welcome to Worthy the Podcast, where we have conversations about what it means to feel worthy and what happens when we don't. I'm your host, Jessica Raimondi. Welcome back to Worthy, guys. Today it's just you and I. I felt called to do this episode as it is now springtime, and it's really a great time of year actually because we're coming out of this kind of winter stagnancy and moved out of Pisces season, which is my birthday season. I just turned 45. And it's the energetic new year if you follow astrology at all, and beginning of Aries season. So it's just like a new time. And I feel like everyone's kind of like feeling themselves a little bit. I know I am. So I wanted to come on and talk about, we're going to call this episode The Birds and the Bees. Talk a little bit about sex, a little bit about dating, and what it's been like or is like now for me at 45. And I hope, whatever age you are, can resonate to this episode, resonate with this episode. And yeah, I think it's just an important topic, especially as women, to kind of bring out into the open. So just a little bit about where I'm at. So turning 45, I've been out of a serious relationship. Excuse me. My last serious relationship was, I think it ended in 2023. It was like a long-term relationship. So I've spent quite a bit of time now being single, dating, going through all different types of situationships, all different types of relationships, intimacy, things like that were short term. And it's really the first time in my life that I've had the opportunity to experience other men and people that aren't necessarily like my boyfriend, right? So I've had a lot of relationships. If you know me, I've been in a relationship most of my life. I was married, and that was a while ago. That's a whole other podcast episode we could do. But really over the last, I would say 3 years or so, I have been able to be single for the first time. And really what that means is be with myself without having to care for or care for anybody else's needs or wants, and really focus on myself. And of course, did I, hyper focus on what I wanted and, exactly what I needed or wanted at the time? No. I allowed myself to also just kind of be in these last few years and see what comes up. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. And we'll talk a little bit about, again, what it's been like for me, some things that I've learned, mistakes that I made that I can't wait to share with you, especially around dating, and what my intentions are going forward. So I know a lot of you, and I know I have a lot of friends that spent a lot of years single. And of course, me being single, let's call it off and on, again, dating here and there, for a few years is not quite a long time. And I know some of you guys have been single for a while, and maybe that's completely by choice, and that's where you want to be, or maybe it's not. Maybe you're frustrated and ready to meet a partner and all that. And God knows I have so many friends, and we're all in different stages of our life. Of course, some friends are married here in Miami. Most of my friends are single or dating, looking to kind of move towards a family, things like that. And I've been in this interesting situation because I was never actually somebody that felt the need to get married, even though I was married, which I wanted to be at the time, but I never grew up like wanting to be married, wanting to have a husband. And I definitely knew pretty early on that I did not want my own children. And that puts me in a different and kind of unique place right now, because in your 40s, I mean, really dating, I'm obviously pretty much past the point of having my own children. And I am looking for somebody at this point. I now kind of decided that I'm ready and open to meet a partner. And I used to hate that word. Any of you guys with me, I used to hate the word partner so much. But now it's truly what I'm open to and what I want. And that is I don't know, it's just a word that makes me feel good now, because at this stage, like, I want to, there are things I want to do. I want to travel. I want to, really just be with somebody that can complement my life and I can complement theirs, and create beautiful memories together and support each other in life and in our passions and our interests. And to me, that is a partnership. But like I said, I'm also not somebody who is looking for a family. I have a lot of friends who, are desperately wanting to be moms that haven't yet, or wanting to just find that family unit. And that has never really been a goal of mine. And getting back to being single, it's been a really great few years for me because, again, I spent so much of my life identifying myself through a partner, through a relationship, that I actually never really stopped to think what I wanted or needed. And maybe some of you can relate. I kind of just was thrown from relationship to relationship. I never really was setting out to meet somebody, but I had a very easy time meeting people and moving into relationship and letting those relationships go on probably a lot longer than they should have. And then just from one to the next. So to have this reflective time to actually stop and consider what it is I might want in somebody, what it is also I'm willing to give going forward, because my MO is, girl meets boy, probably at a bar, smack into each other, maybe kiss, have some sort of connection, right? You can kind of feel right away. That's been my story. It's like, right away. Maybe go home and have sex and then start dating. Maybe not. Maybe, exchange of energy, exchange of information, and then off to the races. But it has happened for me fairly fast, that trajectory, that it's like I really just kind of went with how I felt. And if it felt good, I just kept going. Never, again, really stopping to consider where I was in my life, what I was ready for, what I was dealing with, what I was bringing to the table as a partner. I don't think that we do that enough, and I'm not saying that we need to be in this perfect place to meet somebody, but I feel like we should understand where we're at, if that makes sense. And I feel like I very blindly, naively went into relationships kind of a bit of a mess a lot of times. And bringing that mess into the relationship, not quite having the capacity to take accountability for what was mine, what I was processing. I came out of a lot of hard relationships, hard breakups, or traumatic situations and went right into a relationship expecting, I guess, that would save me or that would fix everything, and not always having done the work. Again, something that I strongly believe is that we don't need to be fully healed to get into a relationship, but we do have to have a sense of responsibility, like I said, of what we are bringing in, where we are coming from, how responsibility and accountability for my own emotions, feelings, past. Have I worked things out enough to create a safe place for the next person to come in? And I think we tend to go into relationships very selfishly, and rightfully so, especially if we've been hurt, right? We're like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to make sure of this, and that. But again, something that I'm learning is like, well, we're also this other half of the relationship, and the other person has needs. They do. They have needs, and they have their own baggage. They have their own past. They have their own experiences that shape who they are. And are we willing to hold space for that? That is partnership, right? So that's more what I'm interested in now, at this point in my life. And it took me until now to actually really think about that. And I think that's kind of the gift of being alone, by choice or whatever. It is what you make of it, I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. Again, my life situation, my romantic situation has been very different than a lot of you and my friends. But it is a time where you can do some great reflection and you can do some great introspective work. And again, like, so we can provide a safe place for ourselves to call in new experiences and new people. And I just think that I want to just kind of pause on that and point that out. I think that is a great responsibility that we all have to each other, even in friendships, right? It's not that other person isn't going to save us, isn't going to fix us. They're not our everything, right? And this is also something that I'm learning. It's like, I think it was Esther Perel said that we go to our romantic relationships now for what we used to go to, like, God to, or we used to go to church for. Like, we expect these people to be our saviors, our higher power, our best friend, our girlfriend, our boyfriend, and like play all these different roles. It's actually not their job, right? It's important. And I think something that I value, that I've always tried to maintain, is my own sense of individuality and life, meaning I have a strong sense of family. I have a strong sense of friendship in my life. These are priorities in my life. I value my self-care, my spiritual practice. Those are things that are mine, that will always be, no matter what relationship I'm in. And I think I've done a pretty good job at that. I can give myself that for sure. But still, even with me doing that, I still believe that I've gone to partners and expected so much of them that really it was not their job to do. So that's just something to think about. But I'm really, really grateful for this time. And I want to talk about something that probably isn't that popular. I mean, in a sense of like, I've also enjoyed this time in just like getting to know men a little bit, like, and understanding, and also like, first of all, I love men. I really think that I'm a straight woman, so men are my partner, but I think it's really important that we get to know the gender of the person that we're dealing with, right? Especially if it's the opposite sex. Like, we just function so differently. We think so differently. We behave so differently. Our DNA is different in so many ways of like, it's just really worth getting to know and understand the opposite sex, but also the people that we are in relation to, right? And that goes back to what I was saying about like being a partner is also the other side of having a relationship, not just having a partner, it's being a partner. And getting to know the person that we're in relationship with is one of the biggest things that I think we miss out on in moving into a relationship or calling in relationships. It's like, well, that is another person, and we owe it to them to know how they, operate and how they want to be loved, right? We all want to be loved a certain way. We all need certain things in relationships, and having needs in relationships can feel really vulnerable, right? And that was something that I struggled with for a long time in relationships, was that I felt like if I showed any sign of vulnerability or neediness, that I was going to be looked at as needy and discarded. And that comes from, years of abusive relationships and just misinformation and codependency that was not healed. But yeah, so I think we need to understand not only who we are, but who we're getting into relationship with. And so I've been able to really reflect on that, and that was, it kind of brings me to this other part, which is where I was trying to get in this, which was that there were times in being single in the last few years, it's like I also really enjoyed sex, right? And maybe we're not supposed to say that, I don't know, but I did. And I think there is something that I did learn. I mean, we've all probably been somewhere where we've had one night stands and we're just kind of like, that was lame. And I don't find that enjoyable. But we've done it, or I've done it. And then I've also had these great mutually beneficial sexual relationships with people that are mature, kind, loving, communicative, but the physical is just all there was. And it was like some of the best times I've had. It was safe. It was enjoyable. It was fun. It was explorative. And those can exist
right? They don't have to mean anything else than that. And I think we get really hung up and really judgy on, sex. It's just something that we have our own shit about, our own reality, our own stories about. And I feel like we judge each other a lot, especially, women judging women, sleeping with them on the first date. It's like, who fucking cares? Like, if that works for you, if that feels good to you, and like that's what you're doing, go for it, girl. As my mom says, get yours. But it was really empowering when I knew that I really wanted to explore my sexuality while I was single in a way that I had never been able to because I was in a relationship for so long. And I called in partners, particularly one that was just, it was great. It was just so, it was perfect. And it allowed this side of me to come out, and it's happened again too. And it allowed the side of me to come out in a safe way and a pleasurable way and in a respectful way. So it's okay to just want to be single and also want to have sex, as long as you're listening to you, to what feels good in your body. And I think that learning that process of learning what feels good and doesn't is a process that we kind of just need to go through. And I don't think it's for us to judge other people's journeys. I really am just so disappointed in some of the shaming that goes on with sex, and especially women and our choices. And again, I say this, it's like more even so women to women. And I truly believe, regardless of what kind of relationship it is, our souls are meant to experience and learn something from every situation, every choice that we make, especially every person that we engage with. And it's not for me to tell you who you should or shouldn't do, unless there's something, a toxic behavior pattern that's being repeated that's harming you or harming a friend, then, maybe have a conversation with them about it. But I think casual sex, mutual, mutual sex, what am I trying to say? Where both parties are mutual consent, right? It's okay. It's like, it's okay. And that can be really fulfilling, in a lot of ways. And I think we just need to kind of own that and have more fun with it. Or if that is not something that you're into and that, I have a lot of people, a lot of friends that have a hard time having sex without feeling a connection, and that's a fear, like that they're going to connect and attach. And like, if you know that about yourself, that's great. Then you do what you need to do to protect that. If you feel like it's a leak of energy, protect that. But I feel like we all need to take a little ownership of what feels good for us and start to learn to trust ourselves a little bit more. And I know that when it comes to dating and when it comes to relationships, that is where some of us can really lose self-trust, because if you're like me, maybe you've lost yourself in relationships, right? Many times, maybe you've overgave, maybe you're walking into that relationship with abandonment issues that are not healed, and therefore that person becomes everything and you lose yourself. We've been there. I've been there. But that is a journey that only, and a path and choices that yourself, whether or not feels good, if that makes sense. So it's like your soul's trying to learn something. The thing is, we're, again, back to like accountability and responsibility. It is also our responsibility to learn the lessons, right? But because they're going to keep coming. The same guy or girl is going to keep coming until you get it. And it's time to elevate and it's time to move on. Trust me. Trust me, I know. And with that, like, I think we need to stop villainizing the opposite sex and start really appreciating that each person, each relationship, no matter how small or how big, is a lesson. There's something to learn there. And you have a part in it too. I'm not saying of course, there are horrifically abusive relationships, one-sided, and those are not okay. And that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about relationships that two people enter in and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, or, we have a tendency to always blame, this person's a narcissist, this person's an avoidant, this person's this. Well, guess what? We're the other person in the relationship. So maybe our accountability responsibility is simply just saying like, wow, I called that in. I made that choice to stay or be with the same type of guy that did not fulfill my needs, that did not make me feel respected. And that is your responsibility to look at. It's all of our responsibility to look at, because we're the only ones that we can change. And there's a lot of power in that. So again, I think having this time to reflect for me and to date in new ways and to have some fun, and also to kind of use discernment in ways that I hadn't, has been just an incredible experience. I mean, I've had everything from, again, those mutually beautiful sexual relationships to flings, to situationships, which I will never do again, by the way. Too confusing. And I just learned, I think I've learned at this point what I want and what I have been doing that isn't working. And I still, at the end of the day, I really try not to blame or shame myself for too much. Again, I'm one of those people who can look at, I really love looking at myself after, the ending of something, and looking at what kind of almost like a postmortem of the relationship kind of dissecting what happened. Again, so easy to blame. So nice to blame sometimes. But it doesn't serve, and it doesn't set me up, at least, to go where I want to, and to elevate into a new relationship. And so I really try not to bring the past into a new relationship. I have had my trust smashed. I've had my heart broken a million times in many different ways, but there's always something I know that next person is not that last person, right? That next person is not the person who hurt me. And it is up to me to set boundaries. I think something we have a really hard time doing, even in dating, is setting boundaries. For me, I don't do online dating. I don't do the apps. That's a boundary I have. I don't like chit chat. I'm a very deep person. So, and I'm very energetically, like I read energy very well. So right away, I'm going to know, and I have to know in person if we're going to vibe. And again, that vibe could be sexual and sexual only. That vibe could be, I want to get to know you more. And I've had some just really, I don't even want to say confusing, but more so like just so unfulfilling experiences on the apps and whatnot. So it's just not something I do. That's my boundary with myself. I trust and know that I'll bump into somebody and it will be right for me if it is. And I think so boundaries around dating are super important. And maybe again, like another boundary I have is I absolutely will not sleep with somebody that I feel anything with, like right in that first night. Done that many times, and it just, I'll tell you why. Here's me being brutally honest. Most likely I'm meeting that, if that's the case, most likely I'm meeting a person that would go, whatever, we would go home with that night. I live in Miami Beach, by the way. So this is a very social city. I'm not like in the rural, countryside where it's like few and far between. We meet people all the time here. So usually there's an element of like not being sober, when the encounters happen, which in the past, fine, but I like sober sex. So I want to know that, first of all, there's going to be some, presence. And the other thing is, I also have learned that I don't want to have sex without love anymore. And I know that sounds really weird and not exactly what you might be thinking. Like love to me, it just means a care and consideration and a tenderness or a connection that feels solid, real, interesting, not just, I don't know who the hell you are. There's a conversation, anything, but there has to be some sort of love, right? And the energy of love, whatever that means. because I think, first of all, the sex is going to be better. I mean, I do. And it is. And you'll get that waiting a day or so. You will. And that will really tell you something. And like I said, I like sober sex. So that's what I'm looking for. Even if it's just a sexual relationship, it's going to be mostly sober sex. It's just more fun for me. So now as I look back and move forward, knowing that I kind of am calling in partnership or, a deep connection with somebody that I hope at this point will want to do life with me, because I'm now in my mid 40s and there's not a lot of time to waste. I'm not saying that I don't like having fun with people, but I'm ready. I think I'm ready for that connection. I was looking at some of the mistakes that I've made that I want to share with you going into partnership or relationship with others. And all right, so I'm gonna share that with you now. So one thing that I do better than anybody is I over-romanticize potential rather than reality. So we're dating, I get a glimmer of what life could be like because of like a beautiful conversation we had or a moment we had. And I'll be like, I will take that, and in my head, I will run with it. And I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna have this life together. And I mean, I over romanticize and overthink in Fantasyland anyway. I'm a Pisces. So that, and then I'm not, so I do that instead of actually looking at, okay, that was a nice conversation. That was a nice moment. But what does the next moment look like? What does the next day look like? What is actually happening between us? What are just literally the reality of who that person is, who I am, and how this is going. It's not just about these romantic moments. For me, choosing a partner is really going to be about everyday life, and how I feel with them everyday life. So yeah, over romanticizing potential rather than reality. That is a huge mistake. And also maybe just that's over romanticizing seeing them in a way they don't see themselves. That I used to do that a lot. And like, oh, I can help them. I'm going to, my love will be influential and will motivate them to get a job or change careers. Or I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm interested in reality, right? I have my own little bubble to worry about. I'm not into fixing anybody anymore. So let me know if that resonates. Another thing I have done brilliantly is assumed that forcing issues would work themselves out rather than addressing them head on. So this has bitten me in the ass many times, particularly, excuse me, particularly in my last serious relationship where we were different cultures, different nationalities, different religions, and wildly different ages, fine, but I didn't want children and he did. And it was COVID and we kind of were like, well, we'll figure it out at some point. And it was one of the driving factors that ended the relationship 3 years later. Okay. So, and it was incredibly painful. I'm not saying it was the only reason, but it was something that I was just like, it felt good in the moment. And I, just figured, oh yeah. And he thought I would change my mind and I thought he would change his mind, because how could we just not have that conversation? But we didn't. That's just one example. Okay. There are, I'm sure maybe some of you can relate to just, it'll work itself out. It won't. Or how about this? Like, why risk it, right? Have that conversation, like right dead on right away, even, especially if it's something like children. Why? The pain of not having it, honestly, is greater in my opinion. Another mistake number 3, I didn't take what my partners said at face value. So especially early on in dating, I feel like people will let on to who they are and what they're capable of if we actually just listen. And this kind of goes into even just like over romanticizing potential, but I had a partner or a guy I was dating, I should say, one time, basically tell me that he didn't feel good enough for me. Um, and I think he even said it in different ways more than once. And it was like, yeah, well, that's a red flag for sure. And it was true. And it's what, I believe ended up sabotaging that situation because I didn't take it at face value. Like he was literally basically telling me like, I'm not going to feel like I deserve you. And so that's going, my insecurity is going to affect this relationship is basically what that means. And I was just like, oh, well, he's hot and it's romantic and da da da. Oh, that's like you make excuses for this shit. It's like face value, guys. Like take the facts. What are they saying? What are they doing? And sit with that. It sucks. And look, it's not fun to feel really into somebody, feel a strong connection, and have to make some really tough decisions even early on, like because it's probably what's best for you in the long run, But we got to do it, or at least that was one of my biggest mistakes. So, number 4, I took advice from people who didn't have the capacity to see the whole story. So this is relationship advice from friends, or didn't have the understanding of relationships, right? So this is such a big one. Taking advice from people. I feel like this could be its own podcast. I'm very discerning with who I get advice from. And it's not because I'm trying to, it's for no other reason is that I've learned that when it comes to my intimate relationships, there's like general things that I can get advice from people on, but advice around certain situations, I just want to make sure that that person I go to has my best interest at heart, A. B, has the capacity to see both sides because I'm not into blame, blame, blame. I think there is a situation that presents itself and sometimes I need help seeing clearly. And I have great friends that can play both sides, and that have really helped me in the dating process, own what's mine and let go of what's not, and also not take responsibility for what isn't mine. I think even just this like Instagram world that we live in is all about these like quotes and these like, bling thing, like these quotes about men or women in relationships and like, these like finalizing statements and it's really great to feel empowered by a great quote or to get on that, like, I'm better than they are train and, really it can feel good. But at the same time, when you're dating or in a relationship, especially with somebody that you care about and you're going through something or something happened, it's a very vulnerable moment. And not everybody, and I'll get into this in a little bit, but not everybody is like out to get you. And so when you get hurt in relationships, it's not always like intentional, right? Or when you hurt somebody, it's not always intentional. And I think having the correct people around you to get advice from is just really important. So I have taken horrible advice about, responding to people, not responding to people, waiting this long to text back, like just all this kind of bullshit. And not forget the who we're going to advice thing for, but like this is also like knowing yourself, because I've taken that advice, gone against things that I would normally do intuitively because I know myself, and it's hurt me more than it's hurt the other person, I feel like. So with that, it's like I'm also choosing to trust my intuition a little bit more, which is another mistake that I definitely have made, is not trusting my intuition. Another one that I think is important, number 5 mistake that I've made, is mistaking depth for consistency. So again, early dating, this can be relevant too. It's like we can have these like amazing conversations, these amazing moments, but what's happening after that? Right? And those can be that can be really hard, because those moments, those conversations, that depth that you can experience with somebody, and then have that person be inconsistent as a communicator, inconsistent in their actions, and just feeling, it makes you feel so confused. And there's nothing worse than feeling confused in any sort of dating situation. And trust me, my intention going forward is to prevent that from happening so much. This is another one. I guess this would be number 6. It's an odd number of mistake that I'm going with here, but it is one, and I don't know if it's a mistake or something, but it's something that I notice, a pattern of mine, maybe that's a better way to put it, is that I tend to draw in men that love the way I make them feel, like love the way they see themselves through my eyes. I'm an empath. I'm a nurturer. I am very good at making people feel good because I can feel people. I can sense what they need, and I love making people feel good. I love loving people. And I have mistaken them, that I draw in these men that I think are in love with the way they see themselves through my eyes, rather than actually being genuinely in love with me as a person. And I think that's why they don't last, or I don't get fought for, or, I put myself into a position to not be chosen. So something interesting. These are just interesting thoughts that have come to me, and I wanted to share them with you. Let me know if they resonate. Ending on like a positive note, and I hope I get to hear from you guys as well, is how I can be more intentional. So the theme for me this past year or few years of being single is learning to be more intentional when dating, because even throughout getting to know myself the last few years, I have started to call in people here and there. And I really did get what I called in, right? I was like, oh, I'm kind of ready for something. So I'd call in somebody that was also kind of ready. Or like, I don't really know what I want. So I call in somebody who doesn't really know what they want. And it's like, it's really powerful to be intentional. And I think when I look back at how I entered relationships so unintentional, right? And obviously a lot of that has to do with age, not knowing, being young. But I got, maybe some of what I was looking for, and then really just made it okay, the other stuff that I didn't really love, instead of being like, no, this isn't what I want. These like non-negotiables and things. So I think going forward, I encourage us all to be, especially in the dating world, intentional. And again, if that's intentional about the sex you want to have, and the partners partner you want to call in for that, and all these relationships exist in many different forms and many different levels, and whatever you're attracting, I'm excited for you. But I still think we should be intentional no matter what. So how I'm going to be more intentional is that I am going to, as I date, which I am, watching for both language and action to meet, right? So I've had action that's shown me one thing, and then language that was very confusing. I've had, all the words and then none of the action, right? So those have to kind of match and meet for me. Also calling in somebody that is emotionally brave, and, who's able to say how they feel, even if it's not what I want to hear, right? Maybe they don't feel the same way, or maybe something isn't working, or I've upset them. Emotional bravery in any capacity. But I also, with that, like, I want to be loved out loud, and I want to love out loud. So I want somebody to be brave enough to love me out loud, right? To not be afraid of shouting out how they feel. Again, the good and the bad. It's just so worth it. And I think that I am emotionally brave, so I think I bring that to the table. I'm also trying to be more intentional with when it comes to confusion. I am not available for confusion anymore, right? And that's partly my own fault. In dating, you're learning, like, okay, when do I speak up? When do we have this conversation? Oh, now I like you more than I thought I was going to. Like, it's just, I don't have it in me. My nervous system is already, programmed to be on alert. Like, I'm already in fight or flight since I was in the womb. and I'm really working on trying to regulate my nervous system. So to have anything that's confusing is just a boundary that I have. Like I cannot enter something that's confusing. So it's clarity in communication every step of the way, if possible. So another intentional act is to just discern, and I think this is a good one too, I will share with you guys, is to discern when the moments are to share like intimate parts of your story. I don't think everybody has the right to my story. And I've told and shared my story way early on. And I'm talking about parts of my life that have made me who I am, things that I have gone through that are precious, that are traumatic, that are sensitive. They need to be held by the right person, and I would encourage that for you guys too. It's just to be discerning as to, when you want to share and is it the right person to share it with. Also that intentional about matching effort. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has found themselves overextending, overgiving in a relationship. And it's just, the last thing that I was in, it was interesting. It's like once I stopped pouring into this cup, the cup ended. Once I took my energy out, there was nothing there. There was no foundation because I was putting everything in. It's become so clear to me. So the effort was all on me. And it was a terrible feeling. So I think that's something to really look out for. It will be for me. And then I think just being intentional about choosing somebody that actually genuinely wants to be a part of my life, that wants to know what I'm passionate about, what I'm interested in, that wants to be a part of my wins, my successes, my lows, right? And also my family, my friends, like wants to be a part of who I am and get to know that. And that's pretty apparent. Look, this stuff is the birds and the bees, man. It is not for the faint of heart. Dating in any capacity, it's just not. And I think we all, need to be a little brave when it comes to this. But you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it. And as I always say, we're in this together. There's no right or wrong. I'm just here. And part of what Worthy is to share what I'm going through, what I have been through, things that have challenged my worth, and relationships is always a big one. And just, providing a space for conversation about things that maybe we don't talk about enough. And I hope that that's what this is doing. And look, like I said, we're in this together. Let's hold space for each other, especially us women. Let's hold space for each other. Let's be easy on our friends that are dating or maybe in a relationship that we don't, necessarily approve of. Like, let's start trusting each other a little bit more, that we empowering each other to know that like we know what's best for ourselves, and sometimes some of us need to learn the hard way. Some of us need to go through certain things to get to the other side. And trust me, us like judging and criticizing and beating each other up is not going to push people to make a different decision, by the way. Empowering each other, especially in our friendships, to we support each other, to empower each other, that they can make their decisions that are best for each other, best for themselves, just as you can. Right? And you can. We all can. So thank you for listening to this episode and watching this episode of Worthy. I will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Worthy the Podcast. Our goal is to build a community, and we do that through people like you who listen, subscribe, and most importantly, share with someone you care about. Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, as well as our YouTube channel. And if this episode resonated with you, leave a review. We want to hear from you. Thanks for being here, and remember, you've always been enough. Period. This podcast is meant to inspire and educate, but I am not a licensed therapist or medical professional. Everything shared here is based on personal experience and perspective, so take what resonates and leave the rest.